Yeah, I mean, super obviously has had a good run up until recently, but even then when it's a boom market, it still doesn't perform to the level it could. So I guess you've got two choices. Obviously you don't want to panic, but you've got two choices all the time. One is become an educated investor and take charge of it yourself and have a self-managed super fund, and you have the potential to generate greater returns because you're responsible for it. Or sit back and allow someone else to take care of it, but you've got to accept that in the market right now, you're not going to get very good returns. So it depends whether you want to be more responsible and take charge of it yourself, or you're just happy to sit back and let someone else take care of it.
Mike, there are inherent risks though, aren't there, in self-managed super funds? People really need to be on top of it, don't they, and aware of the pluses and the minuses.
Yeah, and look, it goes back to, as Jamie said, you need to, if you want to take charge of your own superannuation affairs, and a lot of people find that very attractive. A lot of self-managed superannuation funds is about control. I want to do this myself. A fund manager didn't do as well for me. I have a sense I can do well. Become an educated investor. I agree with Jamie 100% on this. If you are going to go down that road, become an educated investor. Empower yourself. Learn about these things, and if you're interested enough, you might actually enjoy it. And sure, look, you're never going to get away from the risks that the market may go up and down, but certainly it's attractive to some people who want to have that control.
Do you agree with what Jamie just said, that even in the boom times, some super funds don't perform as well as they should? Yeah, well, if you are relying on a fund manager and that fund manager makes a wrong call, yeah, sure, you can perhaps not do as well as other investments. I mean, you'll find that superannuation has a tax advantage regime. So by and large, for the same investment type in super versus not super, then you'll, all other things being equal, get a better return. Now, there's issues around fees and charges, but you know, on a straight comparison of tax versus not, you'll do better in superannuation. But yeah, sure, if you're relying on someone else to make the calls on the investment, there is always the risk, even in your own judgment, that perhaps a fund won't perform as perhaps somewhere else. Now, again, it comes back to what you're comfortable with. I'm 48. All my money in superannuation is in Australian shares. Historically, they've always done well in the long term. I'm in a managed fund that spreads across a whole range of different shares. I'm not worried about this at the moment because I've got quite some time to go before I even worry about cashing in that superannuation. So I'm going to let the history and the market work for itself and maximise my returns. All right, we're going to go to a break, gentlemen. We'll be back in just a minute with more of your personal finance questions. Back in just a sec. Welcome back to Your Money, Your Call. Tonight we're talking personal finance. We've had heaps of calls so far, so let's go straight to our next one. Richard from New South Wales. Hi, Richard.
Hi, how are you?
We're going well, thank you. How can we try and help?
Just as a novice investor, I look at the bottom of your screen and I see the futures, coffee, corn, sugar, silver, gold. How do you get into that, or is it worth getting into, or what's the story?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Futures is a very interesting market to consider. Jamie, what do you think?
Yeah, certainly it comes back to what I was talking about before. If you want to become an educated investor, futures is definitely a sophisticated strategy. You're definitely going to need a serious education before you'd even consider it. A lot of people say they're highly risky. They are highly risky if you're not educated. If you are educated, you can minimise that risk. There's things such as e-minis, which are miniature future contracts. I know a lot of our clients are very successful at that, but they certainly wouldn't even touch them until they go and do some serious education around the topic. And then you can consider whether it's really something for you.
Yeah, what do you think about futures?
Look, futures are a great option as part of a portfolio of other investments, and if your interest, Richard, is in futures, certainly do your research. There is some risk, and look, even professional futures traders can get it wrong, and I've known one who did get it wrong, but certainly doing the research yourself and understanding exactly what you're going into is a great start.
Gentlemen, I'd like to go to an email that we received earlier. This one's from Amanda from South Australia. I'll just give you a bit of a preface. She writes that in recent months, an it appears that many banks in Australia have taken a far more cautious approach to lending, which is impacting on access to finance for investment purposes. We were discussing that a little earlier. So what she wants to know is what has been your recent experience with banking sector lending practice post-subprime, and how do you suggest that would-be investors can manage their way around these now much higher challenges in order to get access to the leverage they need to start creating wealth? And this is an important part, what cautions would you give new investors faced with signing up for a loan in these current conditions? That's Amanda from South Australia. Jamie, what do you think? What cautious approach would you take?
Well, first of all, it is true that with the credit crunch, subprime issues in the US, that the market has tightened right up. There's a lot of players that are in the industry doing mortgages that are pulled out. Non-bank lenders are having all sorts of hassles. So it is much more difficult. I've had personal experiences of late too, with finances. I have a hobby in rural farms, and that's tightened right up with rural lending, and it can be very frustrating. So I do know it happens to everyone as far as the difficulty with that. However, in saying that, there's still no-doc, low-doc loans and creative ways to take advantage of that. As far as caution, it's just a matter of you always want to make sure with your investing, you know what the fees are and things like that, and whether you can afford the money. You just got to always weigh that up, and don't over leverage. I mean, you see people now in the share market that have over leveraged, have paid a very big price for that. In the property market, you can get away with over leverage a lot more because it's a much more secure investment.
What do you reckon?
Well, banks are still lending money, and other providers are still lending money. What they've done is they've tightened up their credit requirements, and therefore, instead of you being able to go and ask for 100% of the money, you just can't get that anymore. But the system still moves on. We're still doing business. So equally as the banks are a little bit cautious about who they're lending to, it means you need to do a little bit more research. It means you may need to have more money behind you than you did in the past. So we're back to probably was what the norm of having to save a little bit more for a deposit. And certainly I agree with Jamie in terms of don't overgear. We are seeing people caught out from that in the past, so perhaps take a little bit more cautious approach in terms of how much you borrow and your ability to repay that.
We've got time for one more caller from New South Wales. It's John. Hi there.
Hi, how you going?
Hi, we're good, thanks. How can we try and help?
Just quickly, I just tuned in, so I don't know if these questions have been asked, but just a twofold: interest rates in the short to long term, and just sold a property, and we're looking for some suggestions on where to invest next, share market or property again.
Okay, I'm going to go to you, Jamie, for the whole interest rates things. Where do you think it's going to head?
Very good question. A lot of people would like to know. My opinion is I think interest rates are more likely to come down before they go up again. If they do go up, they only go up a little bit, and then they will come down. So I'm fairly optimistic interest rates aren't going to be a problem in Australia.
Okay, now, Mike, the second part of the question from John was property, good spots for investments.
John, you mentioned actually you're interested in perhaps a number of areas. Any particular area that takes your fancy? Is a shares more attractive to you, or property, or you're looking just at a broad spread?
Probably more so a broad spread, yeah.
Yeah, look, I think starting off with perhaps a range of options for you, depending on how much you have to invest. As we've talked about tonight, direct property is a great part of anyone's portfolio. If you don't have a lot of money, perhaps investment in the share market, in a range of stocks, perhaps an investment in a property fund might be the way to go. It just depends on how much money you've got to invest, but I would be looking certainly, no matter how much money you've got, at perhaps a mixture of investments in terms of some perhaps direct share market if you're comfortable with that, and perhaps some property funds.
All right, Jamie McIntyre and Mike Goodall, thanks so much for joining us. We've covered a wealth of topics on tonight's edition of Your Money, Your Call. Always good to be able to run through the gamut of issues. I think we've done pretty much everything. So thanks to both of you for joining us on what's been a very informative show. And to you, our listeners, thanks also for calling in this evening. I'm Nina May. I'll be back with another edition of Your Money, Your Call tomorrow night. See you then.